totally do that. Please be that girl, now won't you save me? Alright, let's just do this. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Mike's Spin. It's episode 2. It's long overdue. It's me with the new hairdo, and that's all the rhyming I can do. I rhymed do with do like 3 times there. Well, that sucked. Okay, let's get into this. So today we're looking at the band Gnaeus and their record Meditations. It was their debut album, and it turned out to be their only album. So let's chat about this record. Gnaeus was around for about 2.5 years or so, maybe 2 years, 2.5 years, out of Sault Ste Marie, Ontario, and I had the distinct pleasure of knowing a lot of these guys and playing alongside them over their active run. Being so close to the band professionally, I was very fortunate to be one of the first to hear this record when it first came out about 5.5 years ago, and I've listened to it probably well over 100 times since. Overall, my feelings toward the project are generally positive. I love the band. I really admire their songwriting. Their lyricism, more times than not, is super interesting. Their instrumental arrangements are very unique. So all of these things coming into a full-length studio album really just got me excited. In terms of the music on this record, I mean, this is just a really phenomenal album. My problems with the record, I do have a few. They're largely just centered around what I personally perceive to be shortcomings in its production. We'll chat a little bit about that a little later on, but first, let's talk about some really strong stuff here. When you first give this record a spin, the first thing you're going to notice right off the bat is really proficient instrumentals, really strongly written lyrical sections, and just kind of really interesting interplay between each of the instruments and the way they kind of play off each other, yet they're somehow still kind of off doing their own thing. The way it all comes together is just a really beautiful and super awesome mosaic of instruments. It's very synth-driven mix of garage wave, which is the way they describe themselves, and a little bit of post-punk in there as well. It really sort of carries an indie flair to it. And the whole thing just works. Now, in terms of the songs on the record and their placement on it, they've done a really good job of following sort of the roller coaster arc that you want to on an album, where you start strong, you dip a little, you come back with that middle kind of punch, you sort of dive down again, and then you come back to finish really strong. It's a really good way to carry the listener through that sort of up and down emotional journey as you take them through a lot of your compositions, your lyrics, and all of these different types of things that go into some really quality music. And these guys do that really well. They start off with the lead single, Lovers, which is by far their most recognizable song. They bat lead off with it, they get your attention, and it's a great tune, it really is. Then we go on to Mountains, which leads into Circles, and again, this is where we notice our first dip in the record. Now, I should say, when I'm talking about dips, I'm speaking strictly in terms of dynamics and not at all in quality. Because all of these songs, all 9 tracks on this record, really bring a different, solid amount of integrity to contribute to the overall record. Coming out of the first 3 tracks, the trajectory starts to go upward a little bit, but not very much. The 4th track on this record is my personal favorite. I think this is a real hidden gem. It's such a great tune, and that song is The Edge. This calls to mind all of those great lo-fi indie pop vibes that we all know and love, with a little bit of an almost 90s influence to it. I'm getting some real Counting Crows here, especially just in the terms of the vocal composition and the way that the dynamics inside the song itself sort of go up, go down, up and down, up and down. Coming out of that, into the middle section, we've got Calling Out, Fire. These are all really good songs. Exercise and Self-Awareness is another one. Now, Exercise and Self-Awareness is the shortest track on the record, clocking in at just 2 minutes and 31 seconds, but it does not waste a moment of that. It is followed by the song Fire, and we're going to round back to that one after. We get a little bit of a dip in the 8th track with When You're Gone. It's a good tune. It goes on a little bit long. It gets a bit repetitive, but overall it's not a poorly crafted song by any means. And then of course we end with The Sound, which starts off very, very slow, but slowly builds up into a really, really grand finish that really just sums up everything that we love about this band. And it's a really, really good album closer. All 9 tracks on this record feel like they were almost crafted for the individual spots on the record that they got. Nothing feels out of place. Nothing feels out of sequence. The record just flows so well. These guys did a really, really phenomenal job with that. So now that we've discussed the material on the record, let's turn our focus a little bit toward the production. And unfortunately here, the production is what lets us down with this record, at least in my opinion. And I will say this is totally subjective. This is just me, and maybe I'm way off the mark. Overall, the production of this record just feels very, very formulaic. The studio where it was recorded at, and then the other studio where it was mixed and mastered at, it almost just feels like when handed this project, both studios just sort of had a formula that was very well established as just, this is what works. We take these sounds, we plug them here, we spit it out, and off we go. And unfortunately, the really formulaic elements of this production sort of just hold it back. This is an experimental kind of band, you know? They break some ground here. They do some really interesting stuff that not a lot of people on the local scale are doing. And unfortunately, it's just sort of held back by production that just feels very generic, like it's just going through the motions. You'll hear in some spots where some drum fills kind of go out of time with the counter. They just sort of go with it. So the drums will pick up in a fill and then slow down, and you'll kind of have that weird lull as everything gets back settled in time. This is really noticeable on the 8th track, When You're Gone, where the whole band a time or two just, it seems like they're fighting with the tempo that was set in the studio. They sound super uncomfortable with it. The guitar gets out ahead a time or two. The drums, the fills, again, they go a little too quick in a few spots, and then they sort of have to take a breath before they can come back in to join the rest of the band. It just throws off the whole cadence of the tune. You'll notice this sort of thing on another track or two throughout the record in its earlier sections, where again, a drum fill just almost feels like it goes off the cadence of the click track, and for whatever reason they just leave it in and they just kind of fumble around till they get back on the click. Also, on the topic of the drum fills, on quite a few spots along this whole record, you'll even hear a lot during fills where sticks are clicking against each other and things like that. Everything is just sort of, what is the French phrase? Laissez-faire? Is that how you say it? Another point where this sort of very passive approach to the production really rears its ugly head, and probably the worst instance of it is on that track Fire that I said we were going to get back to. Well, here we are. The whole song itself is really well crafted, really put together. It's classic Gnaeus in all the right ways. Unfortunately, the lead guitar that is overdubbed around the 1.5 minute spot all the way to the end. That guitar is so badly out of tune, or it's so horribly intonated. There's something really, really off about it, especially on the sections where you can tell they're reaching up well past the 12th fret. Everything just gets really sharp and everything's off about it. It really, really screws up the whole track for me. And I cannot for the life of me figure out how that ever got through the production booth without anybody going, wow, we need to retune, or wow, that guitar is kind of out of tune, or wow, that neck might be warped up around that fret. Or I don't know why this made it the way it did. It ruins the song for me. And it's really just another example of just that plug and play production, where it's just like, oh, okay, boys, well, we're just going to record this now. And then they just go in, track it. Okay, cool, we did that now. Let's move on. And it's almost just like everything was maybe recorded at just a rapid fire rate. And then maybe there was just too much to clean up and post that they couldn't possibly get it all. But in terms of production, so much better could have been done than was done on this record. And I feel so bad harping on all this stuff, because in terms of the music, the material itself, the performances you get from these four guys, it's so good. So in the end, after it's all said and done, what are we left with? We're left with four great musicians who wrote 9 tremendous songs, and they made one good album. And they earned a really respectable 7 out of 10 on the mic scale. Mic scale? I don't know. I forget what I called it on the first one. I'm still figuring that out. Any suggestions, let me know down below. Thinking of how great this band is and how awesome their shows were, and just what an influence they had on me as a musician in that region at that time. I want to throw an 8 or an 8.5 on that screen, but unfortunately, the production holds this thing back. And I really hope that the studios that put these songs together and put this album together maybe do some extra passes on some future work, because this album is really good, but it could have been so much better. So there you have it. That's episode 2. What can you expect in episode 3? Well, I'm not going to tell you. When can you expect episode 3? I'm not going to tell you that either, until we get ourselves on a set schedule, which largely relies on me getting this taping on a set schedule. These are just going to come out whenever they do, so there'll be nice little surprises for you when they do. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Really do appreciate all the support and all the love and just everything else. You guys are so great. Till next time, just be good to each other and stay well. I really need to come up with an ending. Maybe on episode 3!